Hey guys, Barrett here in the guitar department. I want to talk to you today just a little bit about strings, string gauge in particular, and how that's going to factor into the feel and sound of your guitar. Folks often ask me what strings come on this or what strings come standard, referring to a variety of different acoustic body styles. Also questions about how you can change from what comes standard on a guitar. What you're going to find on most acoustics are going to be 12s. That's going to be the standard acoustic light gauge. So whether you get a single O or a triple O, OM, dreadnought, jumbo, most everything is going to come with acoustic 12s. It's kind of the go-to in terms of gauge, regardless of the manufacturer of the strings themselves or the manufacturer of the guitar. Typically, most people are going to send them out with 12s. When it comes to thinking about, well, what about 13s, something heavier, or 11s, something lighter? Let's talk a little bit about that in particular. So 13s, obviously a gauge of string that you will never find on an electric, a solid body electric. Some artstop players like those really heavy strings, but in the world of acoustics, they're mostly going to be on dreadnoughts and jumbos. In other words, guitars with a really big top that can support all that extra tension. Because of course, when you go with a thicker string, it's going to be more tension on the top itself. Now, the payoff with that heavier gauge on a bigger top is that it kind of helps to drive the top a little harder. It's a big guitar. A lot of bluegrass guys who are doing a really heavy right hand with flat picking prefer 13s. Just because if you can handle the additional resistance from 12s, of course, you get a much bigger, louder, more aggressive tone. Again, it is more work for the left hand and the right hand if you're doing fingerstyle, but on the right guitar, it can really lead to a bigger, bolder sound, depending on the style of music you're playing. Now, I've also heard it said that some guitars, 13s can make for a bigger sound. Say if you've got a slope shoulder, maybe a vintage Southerner from Santa Cruz, or a Gibson Advanced Jumbo, or a Bourgeois Slope D. You could put 13s on some of these guitars, but keep in mind that the tonal benefit that you get from doing that may not be proportional to the amount of additional effort you have to expend to play the thing. So it really is worth fooling around with and experimenting to see what works best, and if you really notice an appreciable difference in sound with a heavier string, or if the sound is mostly in your hands in the guitar as it is, and 12s might make more sense for the sake of comfort, because again, it is going to be a little more of a fight going to 13s from a lighter gauge like 12s. An important note on setup. Typically when you change the string gauge on acoustic, archtop, electric, whatever it might be, there's probably going to be an attendant setup required, particularly when you're going heavier. And that's because you want the nut slot and the saddle, make sure that those slots have enough space to make room for the additional girth of those bigger strings. If you're going from a heavier string gauge down to a lighter string gauge, setup may not be required. But if you are changing gauge, you might just be aware that you might run into a little buzzing if you're going to a heavier gauge, and it might be worth taking it to a luthier just to ensure that intonation and everything is behaving correctly when going from a lighter to a heavier gauge string. Let's talk about going the other way. So some folks will say, 12s come standard, but it really is just a lot of fight. What if I put 11s on there or something lighter? You can do this, but I must warn you that tone will suffer when you go with a lighter gauge string, particularly on a bigger body guitar. It's just not enough tension on the top for most acoustic instruments to really get a big, full sound out of it. So if you're trying to put 11s on a dreadnought or even an OM, it's going to be more comfortable for your hands, but be prepared for a kind of proportional diminishing of just volume for one thing, and tone too. Again, this payoff might be worth it to you the same way payoff might be worth it for some guys going to 13s from 12s who are willing to put up a little more fight in exchange for tone. It might be worth it to you to have an additional hour in playing going with a lighter gauge string like 11s, even if it does mean a loss of volume. Again, this is just a general kind of overview of the different choices you have, 12s again being the standard gauge string, but just a few things to keep in mind when you're thinking about tone production on your instrument. What's comfortable for you, and what sounds good to you as well. Of course, from here we could launch off and talk about different kinds of strings, coated phosphor bronze, nickel bronze. There are a variety of different styles out there. One in particular that we like are the parabolic strings from Santa Cruz. That might be something worth experimenting with if you want to try a few different things. That's what I like to do. Every few months, my go-to guitar, put a new set of strings on there, and ultimately, you'll find something that works best for your sound. I hope this has been helpful, if a little dry, but hopefully helpful. If you have any more questions on any of the aspects of this little talk about strings or anything else as it relates to acoustic guitars, let me know. Once again, this is Barrett at Sound Pure. Thanks for watching and have a great day.